Next on CEO Exchange, Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of General Electric.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke.
Welch calls it like he sees it and shoots straight from the hip.
Business is a game. It's not some serious, pompous-ass thing.
Next, CEO Exchange goes one-on-one with Jack Welch, a man at the top of his game. They're called innovators, big thinkers, the leaders, the ones who push when others pull. Some transform industry, others change society. Many inspire a new generation. CEOs, chief executive officers, facing challenges, achieving success, telling their stories. CEO Exchange. And now our host, CNN senior analyst, Jeff Greenfield.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to CEO Exchange. I'm Stuart Varney. This is the second time that CEO Exchange has come to the University of Michigan Business School, and it's truly great to be here. My guest tonight is the most respected chief executive of the 20th century, Jack Welch, former chairman of General Electric and former CEO of GE. Jack Welch has been called both one of the toughest bosses in America and one of the most supportive as well. He climbed to the top of the complex corporate structure, and he got there by breaking just about every rule there is to break. From the day he took the reins, and that, by the way, was April Fool's Day in 1981, Mr. Welch went to work, fixing a company no one knew was broken. Back then, GE's net income was up 9% on revenues of nearly $2 billion. So what was wrong with that? According to Welch, just about everything was wrong with that. In 1981, GE did 1/5 of the business that it does today. And then it did it with 30% more people back then. I know you future MBAs like numbers, so here are a few more of them for you. Then, market value was $12 billion. It is $399 billion today. And lest we forget, $1 billion is $1,000 million. The stock price has skyrocketed more than 5,000% in the same period, returning to investors on average 25% a year. So, you may well ask, how did he do it? Tonight, we'll be speaking to Jack Welch about his years at General Electric, his view of leadership, and the personal side of the man who not only remade his company, but transformed himself from one of the most reviled CEOs of the 1980s to one of the most admired business leaders today.
The case for change in General Electric is absolutely clear.
Jack Welch was a surprise choice for the top job at GE, but from the second he took the reins in 1981, the place has never been the same.
It's very hard to tinker with success, but Jack didn't just tinker with it. I mean, he went in there and broke the place.
Welch took a company that was already a powerhouse and made it leaner, stronger, and more diversified. Cutting the fat came first. Welch trimmed about 170,000 jobs, more than 40% of the workforce, earning him the nickname he dislikes, Neutron Jack. Then he ranked employees annually, with the bottom 10% getting pink slips.
We grade people on the bottom 10, middle 70, and top 20. And we do it every single year. We do it rigorously. Now, people can move from the middle 70 to the top 20, and from the top 20 down to the middle 70.
To make the company stronger, Welch insisted that every GE business had to be first or second in its market, or be fixed or sold.
Now, every one of those positions is a leader: aircraft, engine, power, medical, etc.
During Welch's tenure, GE acquired 934 companies.
Think how much wider, how much more engaging, how much more fun it is to work in this big laboratory.
Today, GE offers an astonishing array of products and services, from aircraft engines, power generators, and locomotives to medical equipment and household appliances to financial services to NBC, an unusual addition that made sense to Welch.
High cash flow, growth, great people, pizzazz for GE. Why would you not be in it?
Well, we would have liked to have bought NBC in that period, but we didn't want to buy the whole. The whole was RCA, but he was bigger and he was able to absorb the whole thing and had a better vision than I did.
Welch's vision led to 4 major initiatives during his tenure. One was the Six Sigma program to improve quality.
That defines our job, finding a better way every day. Sounds like a slogan, but it's the way we work.
Next came globalization, with more than 40% of revenues now coming from abroad. Then he grew services like finance and insurance to 70% of GE's revenues today.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke. We've been adding one of those a year for the last 4 years.
Most recently, with digitization, every GE division grew its own web enterprise, earning Jack a new moniker, eJack.
I'd like to get some fresh thinking from you.
Welch had a passion for training future leaders at GE's Crotonville Leadership Center, where Welch's dislike of bureaucracy led him to encourage any company employee to contribute new ideas.
Jack has really developed 400 hitters, and that's a talent I don't have.
At General Electric, Welch raised eyebrows by encouraging staff to cut bureaucracy, face reality, and live their dreams. But his innovations helped GE become the world's most admired company, and Welch the world's most admired CEO. His secret?
Great leadership skills, down to earth, feisty, lots of energy, a lot of edge, a lot of humility, yet a lot of pride.
Even with friends, Welch is a no-nonsense negotiator.
At times, you get burned. You wear your asbestos suit when you're seeing Jack, but you always know it is done because he believes so passionately in where he's going.
And where he came from was straight out of graduate school, to GE's Plastics Division in 1960. Welch almost quit a year after, when he got the same raise as everyone else, but stayed when GE promised him more freedom. Welch moved quickly up the corporate ladder before winning an Olympian struggle to become CEO in 1981.
We're going to grow double digit this year. We're going to go double digit next year.
In 2000, Welch launched a year-long effort to acquire another industrial giant, Honeywell, but the deal fell through when European antitrust regulators failed to approve it.
I consider it the right thing to do in the beginning, to take a swing at it, to fight like hell for it, and to walk was the right call.
When Welch retired in September 2001, General Electric was the world's most valuable company in terms of market capitalization. But his record speaks of common sense, not just dollars and cents.
Every one of us reached further, faster than we ever thought we could. And we loved hanging around with each other. And this corner grocery store of $130+ billion became a family business that thousands participated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Mr. Jack Welch.
Don't be exhausted.
20 years at the top at General Electric. Let's talk about those years. GE has in fact been around for well over 100 years. You've been through 2 world wars, several recessions, 1 depression, crises of every kind, and you still come out on top. What is it that's unique about GE that you're on top and there's nobody else in sight?
Well, I think that if there's one characteristic of GE, it's been a focus on people. And more on people than on a specific business. And I think if you really realize that your core competency is developing human spirit and getting the best of people, you can survive most anything.
You started out at GE in 1981, 20 years since then. There was a recession in 81, there was a recession in 91. Some would say we're entering certainly a slowdown period or a recession right now. That's what, 3 or 4 years out of 20 years when we've had a contracting economy. The rest of the time, it was a growth economy, and some of the best years of growth we've ever seen in our lifetimes. I put it to you, I'm not going to say you were lucky in your timing.
Oh, I
at being
would.
at the top. Well, let me put it nicely and say you were fortunate in your timing at being at the top.
There's no question. There's no question at all. If you think you're going to get an argument with me over that. No, but I think you got to look at who were our competitors in those days. How many here have heard of Westinghouse? When I first became chairman, one of the requirements of the chairman at every board meeting was to show the quarterly results of GE compared to Westinghouse. So I rest my case.
When you took over, you were known as a rebel. You were known as someone who had an anti-established theory mentality. You hated bureaucracy.
I hope I still do.
And everybody knew it. Did Reginald Jones pick you as his successor because he knew you were going to change things and he knew things had to be changed?
I'd give him credit for that.
So you came into this and everybody knew you were going to change things around, standing on its head.
Well, I think he knew I was going to change things. I'm not sure he knew how much.
Did he approve?
Yes, to the day.
Did you start the changes immediately? First week on the job, first month, first year?
Pretty quickly, Stuart. Pretty quickly. And, look, change is awful. When the Wall Street Journal went from 2 sections to 3, most of us had trauma. Change is a very difficult thing. It has very little constituency. Change is something that people do not relish easily. And yet change is at the heart of what makes business vital. And so getting an organization to absolutely relish it, to want it, to see it as an opportunity, to see it to jump on things. I was watching a television show this morning, CNBC, I might add.
Of course.
And a man was on from the Vail ski resorts. And in this terrible time and period that we're all suffering through, he talked about some moves his company was making. This morning, he just bought some Rock Resort properties. He bought several hotels at prices he never dreamt he could buy them at. Because the world thinks no one's going to travel again. That person made a bet. Somebody else who sold them made a bet that people won't travel again. He made a bet, people will travel again. We'll have to see how it all develops. No one knows for sure. But change made that opportunity possible.
You've clearly got a responsibility to your shareholders. You've clearly got a responsibility to your customers. You have a responsibility to make a profit, to gain market share, to be a robust, dynamic, growing business. Do you have social responsibility? Is Jack Welch's heart in making GE a socially responsible organization?
That's a motherhood question, first of all. Now let's go at what social responsibility really means, because it means different things to different people. I'll tell you what it means to me. Social responsibility means win. Become a winning company. Only a winning, socially responsible company, a winning company, highly profitable, can be socially responsible. Because its people aren't worried about their jobs. They're excited. They're energized. They give back. Why? Because they have time. They can focus. They can give back. If you're in a company where you're hanging on for your last nail and you're not sure about your job in the morning, you don't give back. When people are doing well, when people are winning, they give back. They have time to give. They have money to give. Bleeding hearts are not socially responsible. They don't have anything. So having a winning company is what your job is.
Nobody knows CEOs like other world-class CEOs, and we've lined up some questions from those world-class CEOs to ask directly to you. And the first question comes from a man who has called you, by the way, the Tiger Woods of management. That gentleman is Warren Buffett, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Berkshire Hathaway, and here's the question that he's asking you.
Jack, if when you taken over General Electric 20 years ago, it had been owned by your family, so it was going to be run as a private company for the next 20 years. How would you have done things differently if you hadn't been in the public arena but had been reportable only to members of your family as to how the company was doing?
I can't think, honestly, Stuart, of any time that I've done anything that I did because we're a public company versus a family company. I did everything with everything I had in my body. I did it with all the integrity I thought I had. I never cut a corner. I never did a thing that I thought was out of line. I did it the best I knew how.
A private company, you could have done some things quietly. A public company, you've got all kinds of reporting duties.
I was never concerned about that.
No?
Nope.
Never want to keep things not quiet, but private.
Give me an example.
Strategy of some sort. Your acquisition strategy. Of course, you didn't lay that out as a public company, but you made it clear what your strategy was.
But I made clear in my annual reports every year, I wrote the annual report not to share owners, but to employees. I even dedicated to employees and share owners. Our largest share owners were our employees. So, look, you can tell everybody anything. It's in the doing it that counts. I mean, speeches don't mean much.
How about a quick, may I ask for a one-word response before we close out this discussion on just a couple of subjects. What do you think is the true function of a CEO?
Lead.
What is the most important quality, one word to describe, that a CEO brings to the table?
Passion.
What's the single biggest, most frequent mistake that CEOs make?
Only one word?
No, you can... Take your time, Jack. Take your time.
I think it's not recognizing that they're probably the last person to know what's going on.
Do you really think that? Do you really think that the CEO is the last person to know what's going on?
In most cases.
Would you say that was true of yourself in
Absolutely.
the last 20 years?
In most cases. And one of the things that's absolutely critical, and we'll talk about it either now or later, is the CEO better appoint, if a CEO wants to drive a company in a direction and announces an initiative or anything like that, who he or she appoints to the job will tell everything about how serious they are about the effort. Because everyone in the organization can evaluate everyone in the organization. They know who the winners are and who they're not. And a CEO most often says, this is where we're going, and we're going to put Joe in charge. And Joe's got about 3 months to go to retirement, or Joe's been almost canned twice. And that, all of a sudden, kills the whole initiative.
Let's move on to Jack Nasser, who first met you before he was named the CEO of the Ford Motor Company. And here's his question.
Jack, after 40 years in the business, you've gone through some big winners and some big losers. And a lot of people probably would ask you to talk about failures and what you didn't do. What I'd like to do is ask you about your biggest success. What is it?
Without question, building in General Electric a meritocracy where it's all about unleashing people. The modern corporation where everyone counts, where people come to work every day knowing we care about their idea regardless of the stripes, where people are evaluated in a candid way, right between the eyes, where they stand, no phony appraisals. Because the cruelest thing you can do in life is that game where you appraise people over the course of their career. And then they get to be 55 and somebody calls them in and says, so long, we don't need you anymore. You're not very good. And they bring in 30 years of appraisals that say they're just fine. So don't any of you think you're being kind managers, that you're being good people because you give nice appraisals. That's the cruelest thing you can do to a human being, is not let them know where they stand, what they need to do to improve, and if they can't improve, ask them to move on as early as possible. If business schools talk more about appraisals and how to do it, and had courses on that, we'd be a lot better off. If human management became the major rather than quantitative calculations of strategy and this other nonsense became the issue, we'd be a hell of a lot better off, because your job is to build the best team. The reason why Michigan beats Illinois, damn it, every year, is they field a better team.
On that note, we're going to go to our audience. We have two professors in our audience today from the University of Michigan School of Business. Noah Tichy is director of the Global Leadership Program, and also he ran GE's Crotonville Leadership Center for 3 years. Professor, your question, please.
Hi, Jack.
I know.
I had the opportunity in the last 2 weeks to interview the 3 contenders for your job. Jim McNerney at 3M, Bob Nardelli at Home Depot, and last Friday, Jeff Immelt. And I asked them candidly about the succession process. And 2 of them gave you Fs on the decision. 1 gave you an A. But in a world where a lot of blue chip companies have failed at having a successor, IBM had to go outside, Merck had to go outside, 3M, Home Depot, HP, you succeeded. What lessons are there for other CEOs and aspiring leaders for how to develop that leadership pipeline for succession?
Well, I think, as you know, Noel, you were part of starting it with us. You live it. I mean, we saw our job. One of the things that helps us in GE versus a single product company is you couldn't possibly know how to do a Seinfeld show, build a jet engine, do a CAT scanner, and build something else. So we don't have a problem knowing less about a particular business. Our skill has to be, can we pick the right people? So every day in GE, they say, is an appraisal. We appraise people in the hallway. We appraise them. Every day we're testing people in new environments. And so it becomes an obsession. People are obsession. I think my batting average has gone from, in the early days, 30 to 40% to something like 75 to 80% I'd give myself today. Still the hardest job in the world to be right all the time, and you're surprised all the time. I think, though, we started this process 6 years before, and we worked hard on it, and it was the most important decision of my life and the board's life in GE, and we took it that way, and we had some great candidates.
Thank you, Noel. Now we have a question from Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn is the M.E. Tracy Professor of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management. Bob.
Thank you. We could have an audience full of executives here listening to Jack Welch explain success and talk about those things like cutting the bottom 10% and all those tough policies at GE. And that could be a recipe for disaster. That is, if that's all they hear, and they don't have that commitment, that passion, that caring, that support, they'll go off, do those policies, and be a disaster.
I do believe that one of the mistakes made in this 20-70-10 thing you talked about, Professor, most companies, in downsizing, for example, in this times we're in now, will spend so much time, the HR people and the CEO, on worrying about the 10% that go. The most important thing for leadership in a time like this is to be fair to those people, to be sure it's not a surprise to them because I've had candid appraisals, but more importantly, go hug the top people in the company. Go tell them you need them for the next game. A star is worth 5 to 10 average players. It's no different in business. than it is on the football field down the street here. It's no different. And you've got to be sure that you take care of your stars all the time, in good times and in difficult times.
Professor Quinn was really all about leadership, and that's what we want to talk about it more. At Crotonville, that's your executive training center,
Right.
and people there that I've talked to say that you come on often like a professor, that you would have made a very good professor at a good school. All right, can you give me a 30-second lesson in leadership?
I think that, first I'll talk about the qualities. I see in leadership 4 E's wrapped in a P. Energy. I look for energy in people. In a world that's moving as fast as this, you've got to have incredible energy. Secondly, I always look for people who could energize others, the second E. Because if you're a whirling dervish and you're not exciting others to your dream and opening them up to do things, your energy isn't worth anything. Third was edge. The person who could say yes or no and not maybe. Or not that damn manager who says, let's recycle that another time. Come back in a month. That's not what you want. You want yes or no. You don't have time for it. And then E, execute. Get it done. Deliver on what you say. And wrap that all in a big P. Passion. Care more than the next person. Care.
Can leadership be acquired by anyone, or is it inherent in just a few people?
No, I think it's both. I think that there's some gene that gives people some degree of self-confidence, but I think it's all about life experiences. I think coming to the University of Michigan and getting an MBA is another notch of self-confidence. Some people get it their mother's knee. Some people get it by being valedictorian. Some people get it by being the best athlete. But it's always building a notch. I mean, for me, with a speech impediment, 40 years ago or 35 years ago, I had to give a speech and it was written. And God, I got sick before I went on the stage. Now I can go in front of 10,000 people and stammer all over the place and feel very comfortable doing it.
How do you give people back their self-confidence once they've lost it? You as a leader, can you restore it?
It's very hard. I think it's one of the hardest things in the world. You try, but when people get in that vortex, you've seen it, that awful vortex of losing self-confidence, I almost always believe they're better off going to a new environment and starting again. But my experience is, if you lose it among a peer group, it's one of the worst things you see in business.
As a leader, how do you motivate? Is fear a part of your armory?
No.
Rewards of money, perhaps?
Rewards include in the soul, with better jobs, job content, in the wallet, with more money, with more options, with more. But mainly what you want to do as a leader is you want to give people a chance to take a swing. Your job is to let them take a swing so they can build a confidence. You'll never build a great team if you always give them the incremental assignment. You want them to stretch and try to do something that they didn't think they could do. And then when they do it, they've got a whole different level of self-confidence.
My friends at NBC and CNBC tell me that you reach often right down the totem pole. You don't just talk to the top brass at those organizations. You come right down to individual anchors and producers and chastise them sometimes on their ratings on occasions. Is that part of your style, to reach right down the totem pole as far as possible?
Well, I would say encourage them to do better rather than chastise them on their ratings.
Let's move on to another CEO question. Boeing, as you obviously know, is the world's #1 aerospace company. It's a very big customer for GE jet engines and its division there. This next question comes from Boeing's chairman and chief executive, Phil Condit. And here's the
I will
question.
be very careful with this answer.
Jack, we built the Boeing Leadership Center with a lot of Crotonville mixed into it. It has been a tremendous, powerful thing for Boeing. Why is it you think that a lot of other companies haven't modeled and used the Crotonville example?
That was a lot easier than I thought it might be. You know, I don't know why. I think going forward, I think if you're going to have change in a company, the only way to have change is to have an educational center. The only way to do it is to relentlessly communicate the need for change, the rationale for change. And you have to do it over, through, and around the organization. One of the things that happens in many companies as people start to change, there are resistors to change. And the resistors will take any message and spin it just a little bit, so that what you say and what you mean will be told just a little differently to the next layer, and then the next layer. I found, and Noel Tishy, who spoke earlier, was at Crotonville in the early days, found so often that the message, you'd go to Crotonville and had people be nodding and understanding it all. That isn't what they heard back at the office in the early days, because the resistors were fighting the change desperately. Don't forget, when you're taking out bureaucracy, a bureaucracy that thrived in that environment, there's not a lot of happy campers there. So unless the resistors are dealt with, I think an education center allows leadership training and allows the message and allows people to challenge the message. I wouldn't know how to run a GE without that. Other people might find it very easy. I had to go there twice a month to know what was going on. I had to go after the 4-hour class to the bar and hang around for 2 hours, drinking beer with them to know how they felt. And I could bring stuff back and then talk about it some more and refine the message. Schmoozing is an important part of running a company.
What do you mean by schmoozing?
I mean that when you start out a meeting Monday morning that's pretty critical on a budget review or something like that, we spend the first half an hour or so talking about what happened on the weekend. Did you see Tiger Woods sink that putt? Did you see Michigan win this game or that game? Did you see any? I mean, it's a family grocery store atmosphere. It is not. Business is a game. It's not some serious, pompous ass thing.
You've done a great job in projecting your personality and letting us know what kind of a person Jack Welch is. And we want to do a bit more of that. So hold on for a second, because we're going to hear a little bit more about the personal background here of Jack Welch. Here it is.
Everything we are doing in the service arena has the potential to be another service shop.
Jack Welch is known as a tough CEO, demanding, visionary, brutally frank. Where did he get these qualities? From his mother, of course.
I think my life was formed by my relationship with my mother. She knew how to kick, she knew how to hug, she could build self-confidence. She was my life.
Welch was an only child born in 1935 in Salem, Massachusetts. His mother instilled in him a passion for learning and sports. Welch's father, Big Jack, was a train conductor. Welch, now a walking symbol of big corporate America, grew up in a household that was pro-union and democratic.
Look, I could be a union leader. I could have gone either way, probably. I might not get elected, I don't know, but it's tougher in their business to get elected. Here you get picked.
Welch's father also introduced young Jack to golf. It became a lifelong passion.
He went back and forth with the big shots in the commute, and they were always talking about their golf games on the weekend. So he said, geez, he must have figured out, hey, you better learn how to play golf. You can do that all your life.
One time, Welch beat golf pro Greg Norman by 1 stroke, though when pressed, he admits he was shooting from tees that were closer to the holes.
We were just the two of us sitting there having lunch, and all of a sudden he just jumped straight up, went roaring out of the room, and came back with the golf card that recorded the score where he had beaten Greg Norman. And that event was, he could not resist showing that card. Now, I'm not the only one that's seen it. A lot of other people have seen that card.
After high school, where Welch was captain of the hockey team and co-captain of the golf team, he studied chemical engineering at the University of Massachusetts and earned his Ph.D. at the University of Illinois. Welch joined General Electric's plastics division at age 25 before rapidly moving up the ranks. In his new book, Jack, Straight from the Gut, Welch claims he never was the smartest kid in class, but he had the right skills to get things done.
He can take people in the GE organization who might have been in awe of some other type of CEO, and he can get them to open up, and because he opens up himself. And you get some guarded type or somebody that's mouthing PR baloney or something of the sort, and they're not going to get any feedback from the troops. And Jack is, he says what's on his mind.
Nice to meet you guys. As you disappear.
Welch brings his trademark exuberance to all walks of life.
You didn't know about the meeting. That's what
Ford
I said.
CEO Jacques Nasser recalls a chance encounter with Welch in Paris.
I stopped the car and rushed out and grabbed him right in the middle of the street, and we shook hands and we talked, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm glad you're here. We've got to rush in here. This shop has the best ties I've ever seen anywhere in the world. Let's go in and buy some ties." And he was enthusiastic about buying ties as he was on some recent acquisitions that he's made.
And Welch made sure his own children shared his competitiveness. A boyhood friend of Welch's son, Mark, Joe Lemont, CEO of Trilogy Software, says he and Mark were taking up skiing and talking about how they'd like to finish in the top 20 in a ski race.
Jack was across the room, and he hears this. And he comes over, and he's like, "What are you guys talking about? What are you talking about? If we're going to do this, you guys are going to be first, you're going to be second, you got to be 1 or 2. None of this top 20 stuff." And Mark came in first, and I came in second.
Welch's mother died of heart disease in 1966 before she could witness his success. That's what Welch calls his greatest disappointment. Welch himself had a heart bypass operation in 1995.
He called me one day because I'd had a coronary bypass, and he said, "Let me ask you a question. I'm going to go have a bypass." And he then proceeded for the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, asking me questions that you would be asked by anybody who was a little nervous about, is it painful? What's the shot like? How long are you out? Is it scary? As I was talking to him, I was thinking, oh, this tough man's human.
The week after he retired as the heart and soul of GE, Welch published his memoirs, having received a $7.1 million advance for a business book. It was an instant bestseller, and Welch hopes his story will inspire young people who have dreams.
If this book does anything, it should tell a lot of kids, everyone's got a shot. Everyone's got a shot. That's what this tells you. Here's a guy that could be doing anything, and I end up running this company. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Jack, on the personal side, you were clearly strongly influenced by your mother. When she passed away, I am told that you retreated, if I can put it like that, you retreated from what had been a rather intense Catholicism. Forgive me for asking, but have you retreated from all spirituality?
No, I've retreated from a ritualistic spirituality, but I have it in my soul. I had a funny thing happen to me, as a matter of fact, the other day. I'll share it with you. I was walking back from a meeting I had on Park Avenue, and I was coming back to my office in Rockefeller Center at the time, and I had this, and the September 11th issue was in my mind. And I've walked by St. Patrick's probably 1,000 times in the last 10 years without going in. And somehow I had to go in, and I spent an hour in there by myself. Because I think we were all touched in some way by this thing, and this terrible thing. And for some reason, it was a sunny day, my life couldn't have been better, and I just had this incredible urge to go back in there.
1995, you had, I think, quintuple heart bypass surgery.
Right.
Was that a real change in life for you, a change in perhaps your spiritual approach?
No.
Did it have enormous meaning? Because clearly, when you have that kind of operation, do you not sense, perhaps for the first time in your life, your own mortality? And doesn't that make a difference?
You know what I thought, Stuart? Larry Boston, my friend at Allied Signal, asked me, he said, "Jack, what were you thinking of just before they cut you?" I said, "Damn it, I didn't spend enough money."
No, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. Come on.
I did.
No.
I did.
No.
I did.
No. Jack, sir, that is a very good line, But come on, as you're about to go for quintuple heart
my
bypass
assistant is up
surgery,
there, and she will defend that line.
your mortality never crossed your mind. It never crossed your mind that this is a major event. Your life is threatened.
It happened so fast that I honestly didn't think that. I literally, you know, we all are products of our background. Yeah. And I didn't have two nickels to rub together, so I'm relatively cheap. And I always bought relatively cheap wine. And I always looked at the wine price in the restaurant. And I could never, I swore to God, I'd never buy a bottle of wine for less than $100. That was absolutely one of the takeaways from that experience.
After the operation, you would not buy a bottle of wine for under $100. And before the operation, you wouldn't have seen Dad drinking a bottle of wine over $100.
Right.
Is that it?
That's about it.
Well, a life changed, clearly. Is there anything that you do today in your everyday life which you think your mother would reprimand you for? Apart from your retreat from Catholicism.
No, I think, you know, for me, the tragedy of life is my mother would have so many scrapbooks now. I mean, she had a scrapbook if I came home from school with an A. So she'd have so many scrapbooks now, she'd have to have another house just to put the scrapbooks in. I think of her all the time, so I wouldn't do things that would in any way make her hurt. I'd try. She was my role model. I'm an unabashed fan of my mother. I mean, I'm a grown man, but here I am, an unabashed fan of my mother. She meant everything to me.
And she would have been very proud of you. You think?
I think so.
You're happy with what you've done in life in light of the way your mother brought you up?
Stuart, I've taken the best shot I know how to take at this game of life. I did it as well as I could. I made mistakes, but I really like the person who's in this skin.
How are you going to spend your money now? I know let us mention the book. You got a $7 million advance for this book, and I believe that you donated it to charity.
I did.
Now, elsewhere in your business life, you have made a ton of money. How are you going to spend it?
A lot of it will go to charity. This book will raise $10 million totally with overseas rights. Every one of those dollars goes to inner city. That's primarily what I'll do.
Andrew Carnegie made a ton of money and gave almost all of it away, believing that inherited wealth was a curse for the next generation. Would you go that far?
No. I've got kids. I've got 8 grandchildren. I want them to have a great life. I don't think it's going to get in their way. I don't have greedy kids. I don't have kids that need material things. I'm very proud of my family. And God bless them, they got lucky. They got a dad that made some dough.
Let's move to our last question from as chief executive. And this one comes from Mr. Michael Eisner, chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company.
Now, I know, Jack, your answer to the question is going to be you want to encourage young, vital, new executives in General Electric. But in that you are the strongest, smartest CEO in America, why didn't you convince your board, as many states have now made retirement age later than 65, convince your board to move retirement from 65 to 70 or 75? Now, I'm 10 or 15 years away from that, so this is not a personal question. Just curious why you didn't lie down on the floor and say, hey, wait a second, I'm not ready to go.
Well, obviously, that was an alternative. And it was one that entered my mind for about a second, a nanosecond. The facts are, you have to repart the plan. The facts are, an organization, people join GE expecting to move. My movement out created all kinds of opportunity for great people to do great things. And time for a fresh look. Look, after 20 years, probably after 15 or so, you start walking by things that somebody else will see in a different light. So what you need is a refresher. The nice thing is, the company's in good shape. My successor is comfortable with himself. He will, in fact, make changes, as he should. And the company will be better off because we got a whole new set of eyes in a whole series of positions that revitalizes. Companies got to be revitalized. That's why schools change deans and do other things. The whole thing is to revitalize the process.
Maybe we should move on to your plans for what you're going to do after GE. Would you take a government job?
No,
Would you stand for elective office?
absolutely no.
Why? Why so emphatic?
I want no part of it. I don't like the need for constant compromise. It doesn't fit my personality.
Do you plan to run another company? Would you start up a company? Would you take another role in business?
Well, I'm going to. I'm going to consult for several companies.
You're going to be happy doing that?
Yeah, I'm going to be thrilled doing it because I'm going to be doing some writing. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to try and compete for jobs with you, maybe.
No contest, you win.
No.
Will you? Okay, Reginald Jones, after you'd come in, he was quite free, I think, with advice as to, what you were doing with GE. Would you do the same thing with Jeffrey Immelt? I want to put it delicately. Will you meddle?
I'm going to do exactly what Reg did. He taught me how to retire. He never called me. I called him. I don't intend to tell Jeff to do anything. I don't intend to meddle in any way, shape, or form. I'm gone. That's yesterday's page. We turn the page on that part of life. We get on to another one. I root for him. I cheer for him. My stock is with him. But I will not meddle. I had a predecessor who really taught me how to turn the page and get on with life.
Well, Jack, shortly, I'm going to be turning to the members of our audience, our future MBAs, for their questions to Jack Welch. But first, this look at the University of Michigan Business School. For the past 77 years, the University of Michigan Business School has been educating future MBAs in the nation's heartland. The school has nearly 900 full-time MBAs, a quarter of them from outside the United States. Since 1988, the University of Michigan Business School has placed in the top 10 on Business Week's list of the best business schools in the country. It is currently ranked number 6.
Okay.
Well, Jack, this is where we start the truly tough part of tonight's program, because we're now going to ask our audience of future MBAs for their questions. Please step up to the microphone and give us your name and the question. Young lady, first off, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gary McWitty. I'm a business student here. My question is, in your book, as well as this evening, you've talked about the 4 E's wrapped in a P. And how do you teach leaders the difference between creating an edge and creating fear in an organization?
I think that's a great question. I think the question is a value system. There are 4 types of managers. Talk about it all the time. One who has the values and makes the numbers. Love them, hug them, take them onward and upward. Second one doesn't have the values, doesn't make the numbers, get them out of there. That's easy too. The third one has the values, doesn't make the numbers, give them a second and third chance. The fourth one's the one you're talking about, the tough one, the horse's neck that makes the numbers on the backs of people, the go-to person in an organization. And an organization that doesn't root them out can't talk about values, can't talk about the human equation. And in our company, the turning point came when we took out people who were delivering great numbers and asked them to move on to other things because they were doing it by creating the atmosphere you just described.
Sir, your question.
Good evening, Mr. Welch. My name is Chris McCardle. My question is, over the last 4 decades of your leadership of General Electric, how have you and your family, particularly your spouse and your children, had to continue sacrificing to help you become what people have called the CEO of the century?
Well, we've lived a very good life. We've had a chance to work hard and play hard. I think there's always a discussion about balance, family, work balance. People have to define it in their own way as to what it means. In our case, It meant work like hell and always take a vacation in the summer and always ski in the winter. That was the way we did it. So we had a chance to do both, but we didn't dabble a little bit in either thing.
And our next question is from?
Hi, Mr. Welch. I'm Eva Skidmore, and my question is, does the GE leadership model translate across international borders? How do you move the bottom 10% out in countries where it's virtually impossible to do so?
There is no country that I've yet come to that's not possible. In Europe, for example, while it may take more time and be more expensive, it's done by every company in Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Welch. My name is Greg Renievich. I'm a second-year MBA student. You talk a lot about leadership, and some would say that you've perfected the model of the leadership engine in the corporate world. Do you think that this model of measurement and rewards can be transferred into a government organization, for example, the education department?
I wouldn't want to try it. No, I think it's very hard. I really wouldn't know how to tackle it. Every time we go to a merit-based system, it's fought against. I would argue, probably unpopularly here, that the tenure system decays an institution. It's not a popular thing to say in the middle of a university, but I believe it. I believe it's the constant renewal process, the measurement, the expansion of one's ideas, the growth, the personal growth. That's what it's all about. Most government institutions don't encourage that. There's very little reward for it.
Hi, Mr. Welch. I'm Jeff Wilkins. I'm an MBA 1 here. Unlike Jack Nasser, I would like to know what the worst professional decision you've ever made is as a leader, when you realized it, and what you learned from it.
It's so easy. I mean, I bought Kidder Peabody Investment Bank, and I bought it in the midst of a time when I had bought RCA and bought ERCA. I was on a roll. So I bought this company. The culture was totally different. It didn't fit. It's a place where, investment banks are a place where the rowboats can make it to shore while the Titanic sinks. And GE's a place where every measurement's around GE winning as most important. That cultural difference was so great, the gap was so big, that we could never bridge it. And we could never integrate it into the company. It was a big mistake. And my lesson, culture counts a lot. I didn't make acquisitions in Silicon Valley in the 90s because I couldn't ever look an engineer in Milwaukee in the eye and tell him that we had to buy a BMW to get an engineer to show up for the company in Silicon Valley, but because he happened to be working in Milwaukee, he didn't get a BMW. I couldn't bridge that cultural gap between Silicon Valley and our company, and I didn't do that, and I stayed out of that place because of what I learned from Kidder Peabody. Culture counts.
Jack, if I may, my last question. What's your legacy of 20 years at GE? What is it?
If I had to say what it was, I would say we took an old-style military-industrial, highly structured enterprise and created an informal atmosphere where everyone had a shot at reaching their dreams. A meritocracy that didn't look at race or gender or country of origin and gave everybody a shot. That did as much as you possibly could to get bureaucracy out. We didn't succeed 100%. My successor will be talking about bureaucracy 20 years from now when he retires. But we came to work every day, open to ideas from anywhere, trying to create the atmosphere of the informal corner grocery store in a large business, a family business that didn't count where you came from or how many stripes you have on your shoulders. It was all about you, your ideas, and your dreams, with the sky being the limit.
Jack, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank our guest, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, for joining us. And Jack, I think we now know why your book is called Straight from the Gut. Thank you very much. We hope this conversation has added something to the world's marketplace of ideas, because that's the business of CEO Exchange. I'm Stuart Varney. Thanks, everyone, and good night.
To learn more about CEO Exchange, visit PBS online at the internet address on your screen.
You think so?
Thanks for coming.
Great, thank you, folks.
Thanks a lot. That was wonderful. Thanks for everything.
Hey, we're just gonna go roll right into breakfast.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Josh Mata runs a company that helps merchants establish their presence on the internet. Melissa Sconyers designs web pages for a variety of clients. And Jason Meyer serves as the president of a software firm he began over 4 years ago. What's the big deal, you say? Well, Josh, Melissa, and Jason are just a few of the hundreds of bright, energetic, and innovative entrepreneurs who started their businesses before their 18th birthday. They, and others like them, are revolutionizing how, where, and why we work. In this program, we'll look at how youth, ambition, technology, and personal drive have challenged the status quo and changed the way we conduct business. This is today's Life Choices, challenges for our times. Each generation leaves its mark on the workplace. But today's young people and the technology they embrace are shaking up the world of work in ways their baby boomer parents could never imagine.
Even the people that I do speak to directly, a lot of them don't know that I'm 16.
The emphasis on innovation and creativity in general, there's a flood of this right now.
Mike Mazar is the president and CEO of the Henry Elstenson Center, a nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C.
But the ways in which organizations are told to go about it, the value of it in organizations, the value of a constantly creative, innovative, risk-taking enterprise is something that fits into the same kind of context. There's really a profound social transition going on, moving out of the industrial age into some kind of a new era. And it's in that context that I think these changes are going on in the minds of young people, not so much just because of new technology, just because of the web, that sort of thing. Louis Gerstner of IBM, what's he say his major task is? To put the soul of a small company into our big company body. Get small. You've read this all over the place, right? Big firms trying to get small, trying to be fast and quick moving, but not just that. Trying to be small in the ways of teams of people working together, creating communities of interest, owning their work, being creative and innovative outside the context of bureaucracy. Again, trying to create this new workplace.
The computer and the internet have leveled the business playing field. Age, experience, and location are not quite as important in a global and often impersonal marketplace. While adults often shy away from newfangled contraptions and concepts, young people flock toward the latest in technology with enthusiasm, energy, and passion. They turn the newest gadget and gizmo into their own personal toy.
So I thought about it, and I invented an idea that holds the ball while you're playing.